Great, thank you. I want to welcome everyone to the steering group to the Select Committee on the Future of Public Higher Education in Vermont. It's Tuesday, March 30th. And as a reminder for people, if you have comments that you would like to share or questions, you can submit them by email at higheredcommittee, all one word, at leg.state.vt.us, and that's also on our website. So feel free to submit anything that you would like this committee to review. And if you have questions, and Joyce Manchester monitors that account during our meeting. So today we really have two major items. One is to review the latest draft, and Brian and company have done a number of changes, and I hope you've all had a chance to review those. And then we have invited, thank you, Chancellor Zanotny, for joining us. She's been having a number of conversations with both House and Senate members around the metrics. You'll remember at the last meeting she came and we talked some about the metrics, because what we want to make sure is that the metrics that we have in the select report and the metrics that she is working with are very compatible. I would say that as a generalization, the metrics that we have are more in this report are more process oriented and more general, where the metrics that Sophie is working on with members of the legislature are a bit more specific, and there's a time frame for reporting back, but I'll let her give that update. Normally I would have Brian walk us through the changes that he's made first, and then we would go into comments, but Heather has to leave in a half an hour, and I know she has some suggestions or some comments. So I'd like to have her do her comments, and then we'll go back and have Brian walk us through the changes, and then we'll engage in a conversation with everyone else in terms of feedback that you have. Does that work for everyone? Okay. So Heather, do you want to share the comments, the suggestions that you have for changes in the report?
Yeah, so I don't have all that many. A lot of mine were really just typos and things of that nature. So I think those are things that I'm not going to really dwell on. But one that did make me hesitant about signing off is that on page 55, I think the phrasing is that the governor doesn't prioritize the VSC, and I'm not sure I would agree with that. I'm not sure. I think that language, I think that's a value statement, and I would prefer if we just stick with facts. I know that he has a number of times in his proposed budget, not just this recent budget, not just with COVID, proposed additional set aside dollars for the VSC in at least two of the last few sessions I can remember. So I'm just, as a representative of the governor on this committee, I'm not comfortable with that language. Now, if it was language, I think it's near the section of the stakeholder piece. So if it's what the stakeholders said, and that, if that's what was represented from the stakeholders, I'm fine with that. I just think it needs to be stated. The way it's written right now, it's as though we're all agreeing with that and we're all saying that, and I'm not comfortable with that. That's all.
And Brian, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think that's something that we can easily make some adjustments to provide that kind of clarity, and also soften the statement just a little bit, so that you can be satisfied with that. And you'll see the next version. You'll see in the upcoming version that we've made an attempt to do that.
Okay. Yep.
I think you're right.
From what I just sent you, like half an hour ago, Brian, you already made the corrections.
Well, no, I've started to. I'm just not. You sent it right as I was eating lunch, so I'm thinking, well, I'm going to look and see what Heather's saying.
Well, you're fast. Goodness.
Yeah, why not? I also want to thank you for catching a few things that we missed in our review of the document. Some of those, it wasn't just typos and missing prepositions. There was a couple of points where we didn't catch language that was referencing the document that we sent to you as the revised report, not the final report. And so I appreciate you noticing those as well. It saves us from having not seen them. And so appreciate that very much, Heather.
Great.
Thanks.
No problem. It's really quite comprehensive and it's in fantastic shape. It's just amazing that this has all been accomplished on our timeline. I just have to thank you all and thank all of us because it's pretty impressive.
Appreciate that.
I'm muted.
Joyce, that's
Sorry.
really all
Heather?
that I have.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry, that's really all that I have. I think I had one other question in there that just said, is this the right date? And maybe that's what you're referring to, Brian.
So in my copy, I guess I'll just ask it because I just came across it. You mentioned the issue we were just discussing was on page 55. I actually have it on page 49 of my copy, and so therefore, because you said 55, I went and looked, and you do have a comment on page 55 also, a question about whether or not we should highlight or italicize this statement about the VSC, any institution of the system if it becomes inevitable that it has to be closed, then it has all these additional costs. I'm happy to do that too. But if anybody on the steering group has any objection to emphasizing that statement, it's on page 55, and it says, should the shuttering of any VSC institution become inevitable out of a failure to act decisively, the state will be responsible for substantial additional costs associated with funding teach-outs for students, campus closures and shuttering or demolishing buildings, paying outstanding debt obligations, assuming the liabilities related to retirement and healthcare payouts of laid off faculty and staff, and numerous other costs. So Heather's idea is to highlight or to italicize that or boldface it. And if anybody has any objections, please say so. Otherwise, I'll take care of that too.
You want me to just say a little bit about why I thought we should?
Sure.
So just in reading it, I thought it's a great sentence, but I just thought it could use a little, like for some of the readers, like the legislature, they'll be skimming along. And I just wanted them to, neon, if you don't do anything, here's what's going to happen. You're still going to be on the hook for millions of dollars. That's really what I meant by italicize, underline, bold, whatever we want to do. Because I could see it kind of getting lost in the fray because it's such a good comprehensive report. And I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
Paragraph too. Yeah.
Did I send you the right version? I hope so, because now I'm concerned at the
Yes, no, you did. You wrote down 55. That was the page where you highlighted this, but 49
So I made a mistake.
is
Okay.
where the governor is the reference to the governor.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry for that
That's okay.
confusion.
You know what? I'm not a big one for a lot of bolding because I feel
know.
like you get. So what about if you just set that in as a, just center that in the middle of the paragraph, because when people are reading down, they or somehow set it off, but don't bold, because then you get into the different headings and stuff. Just somehow set it off. Do you know what I mean? I'll leave that to you, but I'm not one for a lot of different fonts and all of that. But
Even if that was a separate paragraph, it looks like you could that would give it
Yeah.
more weight than it being in the middle of a long paragraph.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anything else, Heather?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you for the
No,
opportunity.
thank you. And thank you for the close reading. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is go back and Brian, have you walk us through the changes that you've made since we last met. And I guess and you can lead us through a conversation and see if people have any questions about the changes.
Sure. I begin by just saying that, and hopefully you all noticed this too, that the change. So first off, to keep the red line documents ready for the steering or for the select committee, you saw all of the changes that were made from the prior one, and then Candace helpfully provided the bullets of the additional changes. So hopefully that was helpful to you. I would say that none of these new changes were, a huge substantive change. We did go through the data appendix, which had a lot of duplicated charts, and got rid of those. Added a few new slides of data that you may have seen before from the 180 or so slides that we produced at some point that we thought were particularly helpful or germane, and then we made references in the document, mostly through footnotes, to some of those data exhibits that didn't make their way into the narrative, but just so that you all could, or readers could, sort of be directed to where additional pieces of data that were relevant to that particular topic might be. And it's already a long document, so we sort of thought putting and writing words around all of those data exhibits probably was overkill, perhaps, but having them is useful for anybody interested. So that was the first set of things. We did some changes just to deal with some of the remaining outline stuff from way back when. And then Breyer had brought up the question about, I think it was Breyer, right? Maybe I'm blaming you. Not fair. Okay. Around clarifying the $5 million to VSAC. And so we tried to make that adjustment. And a refinement in the sixth recommendation that I can't remember what I did, but I might have done that on my own. And then we had to make a couple of adjustments to the timing of the metrics around accreditation. That I caught the major one back when Chancellor Stotney and we were going back and forth about the sequencing of the transformational effort, but I had to make a couple of changes related to that, and also the degree to which the original language in the metric around academic program sharing may have conveyed a sense of completeness, like we're going to do all of this at once and be done, and instead of this being an evolving process that, some of it's going to get done and more of it will happen as time goes by. And then finally, a refinement in the description of the metric concerning affordability, which had to do with, I forget what. Dennis, what was I doing there? I didn't go back before our meeting and look at the change.
I got to take a look at it too. But it was in reference to something that the steering group brought up at the last meeting. So
those were and I'll try and resurrect what that was. But any comments, concerns, questions? Again, thanks to Heather for a close read and for raising that language issue and tone issue. There may be some other things. This is what we hope the select committee on Monday will say, all right, send it in. So if there's anything that you all, even if it's just tonal, like what Heather brought up, we'd be glad to try to be responsive to those kinds of concerns.
Breyer, I would ask you in terms of does the clarification around the recommendation of $5 million, does that, what they did, does that help answer your question?
Yes. I don't think you could be any clearer than you were. I think it's very specifically called out what that money is. So thank you for doing that.
Sure. And I'll just jump in, and the issue with the affordability metric was the use of the term that this was going to be for low income students instead of all students based with appropriate
categories.
Categories, right. That was the change that was needed there. I believe I also added that there is an assessment of sorry, hold on one moment. No, never mind. I retract the statement I never completed from the record.
In the data exhibits, I don't know if you guys, I joined a little late and I apologize. I don't know if you've already
No, go ahead, Sarah.
flagged this. So I was just scrolling down and I think it's been an error from the beginning and not high priority for fixing, but it does put Vermont Tech and maybe CCV in Windsor County when they're actually in Orange County, or at least Vermont Tech is in Orange County.
Yeah, we're in Windsor.
Yeah. Well, you've got two. See, it says Vermont Tech has 2 locations in Windsor County and CCV has 2 locations. I'm guessing that's Springfield and White River Junction. Both
Yes,
Windsor.
but Vermont Tech also shares a location with us in Upper Valley. So
Okay.
they're in Windsor County as well.
So yeah, so one of the orange dots needs to go into Orange County. Representatives and senators from Orange County care about that.
Yes,
right?
they do. Good catch, Sarah. I didn't even catch that. What page is that on, Sarah?
It's
116.
yeah.
Okay.
I really like the exhibits. I've been able to spend a little bit more time with the exhibits, especially the last one. The stakeholder groups. I'm assuming
Yes.
Candace had a hand in that.
Nebby did that, yes.
Yeah.
I think Nebby did a lovely job on that for the record. Thank you, Nebby.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sarah, which one of those 2 orange dots should go? I'm just not.
The top one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So just a little bit further up, just over the border into Orange County. It's in Randolph.
But you're right, Sarah. Those are really sensitive things.
All right. I'm sure that was just an accidental drag of the mouse. at the wrong time.
Well, if we're getting really specific, that red and orange dot that's in
Should
Windsor
be.
County should be right together.
Sorry, what?
So the red dot that's more north
Yeah,
and the orange dot that's sort of along the border
yeah.
should both be, the red dot should be moved down to join the orange dot or very close to each other, because actually Vermont Tech we're in the same location. They actually rent space from us in those 2 dots.
Yeah. Aren't you guys co-located in Rutland also, or is one at Stafford and one's at?
No, we're not co-located in.
Okay.
We're co-located in Brattleboro. Yeah, so in Windham County, I mean, I think this we're splitting hairs, but in Windham County, the orange and red dot should be together as well, because Vermont Tech rents space from CCV.
Yeah.
Part of the reason for this that it even catches my attention is from the workforce angle. We've entertained several conversations about co-locating, and especially as we move out of the state offices or the state government, moving from hybrid to potentially a blend of hybrid. I know from the workforce world, we're thinking, what's it going to look like in 6 months and 12 months if we could co-locate with some of our partners a little bit more than we are right now. So because those conversations are happening and this just visually supports, the interest in having people be together and having it be a one-stop experience for students. It's not, that's why it catches my
Gotcha.
attention.
Neat. We'll take another look through that.
Okay.
The other piece is Castleton, and I don't know how specific you're getting, but I guess for Vermont Tech, you've got nursing sites on there. Castleton has a nursing site in Bennington as well. So in Bennington, Castleton, VTC and CCV are all together in Bennington. You're going to be really sorry that we even started this
I know.
Yeah.
And actually, Sophie, I was up in I live just outside of Killington now, but I went up the mountain road to a restaurant over the weekend, and it occurred to me that you've got the Castleton
We do
site
have-
up by the mountain too. That's probably too far down the road of saying, look at all these locations, but I don't,
Yeah, we do.
They're
We
really
have a
everywhere.
management. Yeah, we have a resort management program through Castleton at
Yep.
Killington. Yeah.
I think we built this map back when we were,
pitching
before we
us.
were really aware of what the nature of the Vermont tech sites were as primarily nursing. And they were just an array of sites. And so we just plumped them all in, roughly the right places, but apparently missed a few of them. So, okay.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what you want, because really, I mean, VTC has two campuses. They have the Williston and the Randolph campus. These others are nursing sites. So yeah, you might want to, it's just if you're going to do it for one, then you probably would need to do it
Exactly.
for all, but it may be
Right.
easier not to.
Right. So I'll ask your opinion. It would be easier for me. Should we just eliminate the Vermont Tech nursing sites?
That's Sophie's call.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Vermont population with institutions, and I guess with CCV, we call those academic centers. So maybe it would be campuses and academic centers, because at the nursing sites, we don't consider to be academic centers. So maybe
Okay.
if you phrase it that way.
All right.
Otherwise, you're just going to have so many dots.
Yeah.
And again, that some of them are all on top of each other. It may just get too confusing to.
So you said Vermont population with
Campuses and academic centers.
and academic
Right.
centers.
Maybe institution campuses and academic centers. Yeah.
And then,
Because we do say, and we tell people all the time, I think almost everyone in the state is within 25 miles of, either an institution, a campus, or an academic center.
Well, that's true of CCV.
Right.
Use that language we have for years, that we're within 25 miles of 95% of the state's population.
okay.
Okay, Sarah, anything else?
Not that jumps out to me.
Bye, Heather.
Heather leave, okay.
Yeah.
Megan, do you have any thoughts to share, comments, concerns?
Nothing from me. I thought it looked great.
And Briar, anything else?
No, I think the report is good as written. And I believe I would be surprised if any significant objection came from UVM at this point.
Great to hear.
That surprised me before.
Yes. Yes, I hear that, yeah. Okay, so we've heard from Heather, Brian, Sarah. So I guess I would say, Sophie, you probably have had a chance to read it, and before you get to your metrics, any other comments about the report itself?
I don't have any. I did look through it one last time. I did not go through all the appendix, and I'm just on page 121 right now, and I see figure A9 has NCES iPads C 2019A. So that maybe needs fixing. I don't know what, unless there's an intention that it's double iPads there, but
Done.
I have not gone through with a fine tooth comb to, sounds like Heather did. So I'm going to trust Heather's fine tooth comb, but otherwise it looked fine to me, the changes.
Okay. So I guess then I would say, Joyce, Candace, anyone else have comments or concerns?
Sure. I too went through the exhibits and I just sent a note to Brian saying that it looks like A10 through A14 are a little bit mixed up with respect to the table of contents, and there's a duplication of A10 and A13. So that
Okay.
just needs a little bit of review. And I would also say that the House passed budget has a lot of money in it for VSC. And of course, it has not been passed by the Senate. It has not yet been debated by the Senate. But I don't know if you want to refer to House support for VSC, or I don't know what's appropriate at this stage.
I think, so this is just my gut. I think we should not. Because I think that it's gonna, there was tremendous House support. I hope there's tremendous Senate support, but then in the end, they've got to come together to actually give us that. And so I think, because then I feel like if we say there was tremendous House support, we also should give a nod to what the governor did in terms of, you know, giving us some one-time money. So I guess I would rather, I think it's probably safer to just put out what we have, and they commissioned this report. So it's not a progress report, but it's more, but people feel free, and Joyce, if you feel differently, feel free to push back. I just think that it might be safer to just sort of leave the politics out of the report. Because I think Heather is gone now, but I think Heather was pretty sensitive to how we describe the governor's support for this. So I think that would be my recommendation, is to leave out any acknowledgement of sort of where we are in the current process. But I'm open to feedback.
I think we can only make it worse by including any kind of cut on what's happening in Montpelier. So I agree with your instincts to stay out of the political process and let the legislature enjoy full credit for what they end up doing.
Okay, Joyce, any other comments or things that you picked up in your review?
So it is true that the 5 million extra for VSAC did not make it into the House budget. So I don't know if someone wants to talk to someone in the Senate about that, or what should happen there.
A good question. And I think that also actually points to why we probably should stay out of because the things that we've put in here they may not come to fruition, and they may come in a different form than what we've proposed. But Sophie, maybe perhaps in your conversations, you're the one who's probably most engaged with individual members to be able to point that out to maybe even Senator Baruth, because it's in the Senate. Or you said it didn't come over in the House. Is that right, Joyce?
Right.
Yeah, we can flag that as we move forward.
Other feedback, Joyce. These are good catches.
No, I enjoyed reading it.
What I find, Brian, is if I ever need to go back and find some data, I'm going to this report because it's all right there in one big fat package. So, Candace, anything from where you sit in terms of the report?
I don't think so. I haven't had the chance to go through it with such a close eye as many as you have, but I haven't heard any notable questions or concern from NEBI folks or from any of our other Vermont stakeholders. So I think it's in good shape from our perspective.
Did I miss anybody? I want to make sure everyone has a sense of providing feedback. Anybody else? Okay, I would like to now shift gears a bit. And Sophie was great to come last time to talk with us about the metrics that she was working with at the time on the House appropriations and with Representative Peter Fagan. And I know that they've made some progress and some changes. And so Sophie, do you want to share with us where you are? And again, as a reminder, I think what we are trying to make sure is that whatever is in the select committee is supports or is compatible with the metrics that the system is being asked to develop. So we just want to make sure they're not at cross purposes. So,
Yeah,
Sophie.
I don't believe that they are, and I think you're right. The metrics that are in the select committee report are definitely more process ones, which I think are good. I believe I shared with you all the draft language that was being considered for the House budget last time. There were some changes to that from the House Appropriations Committee. There were other members of the House Appropriations Committee that wanted more additional data points gathered. We did share with Representative Fagan the work that's being done in specifically in our EPSL committee in terms of dashboard demographic data. I mean, that we are tracking a lot of this stuff. So there were some things that were added that were more specific. And that I haven't seen it officially on the website yet. It's Tuesday, so it may have happened. It wasn't up yesterday morning. But the draft I had has some additional things in, and I can send that around afterwards. So much of it is the same, but there were some additional things added around retention statistics, enrollment statistics, related specifically. Joyce Manchester just mentioned that there's a lot of money in the House budget bill. There's 20.5 million for what we're calling critical occupations projects, and so there was a requirement in the requirements language that was added to the budget piece. They want some data in terms of that and enrollment in those programs. Demographics of student enrollment aggregated by full-time and part-time students, an inclusion of our profit and loss statements, which again would be something that comes out, so is relatively easy to provide. And then a report by institution of the overall net student revenue and institutional discounting of tuition metrics with relevant trends. And then regarding the deficit reduction plan, the 5 million, report the activities that have generated expense cuts, as well as activities that will result in enhanced revenues, as well as future plans that will continue both efforts, demonstrate the status with trends and relevant industry benchmark information. So that was all added in. And so now it's going over to the House, going over to the Senate. We did talk to Senator Baruth yesterday, who's a member of the Select Committee, and he hadn't yet seen the language, but he's aware of it. So we'll start the adventure again when we get to the Senate. He didn't indicate, he hadn't reviewed it yet, but so I suspect he'll look at it and see if there are, if he had a concern about whether the requirements were too burdensome. Again, understanding that we do want to be, we recognize the importance of being held accountable. If we're getting significant additional funding, it's important that we'd be in a position to report back. And certainly that's, being accountable is something that's critical to us as we move forward. And certainly Megan knows that the board is interested in making sure that we stick to what we need to do here as we move forward with transformation. So at this point, I don't know if there'll be changes in the Senate. I know that Representative Fagan worked really hard to come up with something that he felt was appropriate, that would hold us accountable, require us to report back to the various House and Senate committees next year, as a way of making sure that we don't sort of fall off the radar of the legislature. So, these additional things, again, there was some negotiation that went on because there was quite a long list of things that they wanted added. And this was sort of the compromise that they reached in the House, but I really don't know if there'll be some tweaks to it moving forward. I fully expect that the bulk of it will continue. I would expect that the Senate will want us to have, requirements and be held accountable. But whether I also suspect going through the sausage making machine of the legislature that there'll be some changes just because it seems like that's inevitable. But I don't know what at this point what they might be. I don't really have anything to add.
Just listening to that listing, it seems to me that there's nothing in that list that's contrary to what's in the select committee set of recommendations. They're more detailed and et cetera, but not contrary any place. Is that your sense?
That's my sense, right? And some of the things which I think I touched on before, I think come kind of directly out of the select committee report. So one of the ones that was already in here was enrollment levels in courses offered by the VSC reported on the basis of courses with fewer than 5 students, courses with 5 to 9 students, courses with 10 to 14 students. So again, I think that really comes out of the work of the select committee report in terms of noting that we teach a lot of courses with very few students in them. And then we already had in here, in order to demonstrate accessibility, the percentage of courses and programs offered by the VSC on a statewide basis and on the formats in which they're offered. So again, I think it's, when you look at the whole thing, it's very much trying to make sure that it's consistent with the select committee report and that we're reporting back on things that are consistent with your report. I agree. I don't think there was again, sort of things like benchmarks and industry standards. I don't know what those would be. So I don't know how much work will be involved on those things, but generally speaking, the items that are in here are consistent with the kind of data that you guys have been looking at and that you think is important for us to be tracking moving forward. So I think it'll be fine.
All good.
Questions for Sophie? I actually think that the 2 sets of metrics came out are a nice blend. Because I think
they're very different, but I think
Yeah.
they're complementary.
Because I think that, I think Brian and Dennis and Sally, I think you did a nice job at trying to frame the metrics in a way that provided direction and support for the report, but also weren't at the level of specificity that the VSC worked out with the legislature. And I'm afraid that they could have been in conflict with each other. And that's a place where I feel like at least these in our report are more about the process. But what I think will be reassuring to the legislature is there's some of both. There's process, and then there's very specific, more numeric metrics in terms of what's happening with the money, that the VSC is going to be held to a pretty demanding standard, but I don't think that's the work of the select committee to develop that level of detail.
Sophie, are there any additional metrics that you'd like to see in the report that would be helpful to you in what you'll need to accomplish?
I think we probably between the select committee, the House budget, and then what Megan and her committee are working on with the board, I think we're going to be held very much accountable for a whole variety of metrics. So there are none that I think are outstanding that should be asked. I'm pretty sure that we will be providing a full complement because the board, certainly again in Megan's committee, I mean, they're really trying to capture who are we serving, how are we serving them, I mean, and really honing in on that. So I think we're going to have a pretty rich collection of metrics. I mean, one of the challenges we have is we're quite weak on institutional research, and we really need increased resources on institutional research. So that's something we've got to think about moving forward, because just to provide good quality data out is we really need to have staff that are capable of doing it. So that's one concern I have. But I think what's being asked is reasonable and appropriate, and I think it covers the full the full gamut of what we should be looking at.
Is there any metric in the report you'd like to see removed?
I don't think so. I mean, I've read through these a couple of times and they seem, I think I view it as being essential to the report. The 5 million, the reduction of 5 million each year for 5 years. I think that's probably the one that gives people the most heartburn. That's a really significant lift at the end of the day. And again, Joyce and I had talked about this a little bit earlier. I mean, I think for some people, 5 million doesn't seem very much, but when you think about what our total budget is, I mean, CCV's budget is 30 million a year. So 25 million over 5 years is we're trying to cut our budget by like almost an entire institution. So it's, I think people have real concerns about that. But again, I think that was a pretty foundational part of the select committee report. So I don't see it as a negotiable thing at this point. I think it's something that's pretty clear that we need to focus on, but that's probably the one that people are most concerned about. One thing people have said is, and this is something I guess we'll think about when we're in front of the Senate, because again, in the House budget, it has that same language about 5 million each year, is if we do 6 million in 1 year, is that okay then if it's 4 million the next year? You know what I mean? Because as we transform, it could well be that we achieve more in 1 year and less in another year. And so as long as we're overall getting to that 25 million, I think we'd like to have some flexibility around that and it not be like, well, sure, you had 6 million last year, but you still have to have 5 million this year and next year. So that's probably the only one that I have concerns about and that I've really heard other people have concerns about. But again, I think it's important. I think it's foundational to what the work of the select committee was. You're going to give us money to help us address the structural deficit in the short term, but we've got to be making those changes internally. But I think how rigid the legislature would be with us on that is a concern that people have.
Do you think it'd be valuable if we put in some words in the report that, we certainly want to incentivize VSA to make, we want to reward them to the extent they're more successful than the 5 million, and that should be, to the extent they over-accomplish in year one, they shouldn't need to do the $5 million a year every year. It's 25 million over the 5 years. We don't want you to get behind, we don't want you to do 4, but to the extent you're ahead of that slope, we would want to reward you because in fact, everyone's better off if you can accomplish the goal sooner. And I think just the reality of it, the first 5 million in reductions is going to be much easier than the last 5 million.
And I think that's a concern that we have, right, is that we may accomplish it, it may be more front loaded and then it's sort of like, okay, but you don't have 5 million this year. And it's like, no, but we did all that up front. So, I mean, if there was some language to reflect that, again, I think the 5 million is a good target to have in mind. I wouldn't want people to be complacent about, as long as we get to 25 million in 5 years, that we can postpone doing anything. But if there was some language that captured flexibility, if we do get ahead and we have bigger savings or, generate more revenue in earlier years, that's, doesn't then penalize us down the road of having to make deeper cuts.
I'm happy to try to craft some language around that metric to convey that. Two things. One is I don't want folks in the select committee to focus on that, see it as weakening of the recommendation and resist as a result of that. So I'll just have to be thoughtful about how I do that. I would also point to, and I think the issue here is that it's perhaps not proximate enough in terms of where the language is, but there is language in the report in a couple of places that talk about the need to be cognizant of changing and evolving conditions, and that the rigid application of any of these metrics needs to be sensitive to the realities that that face the system, that including the decisions that the legislature might make about whether or not it's got next year's pocket of or batch of money and so forth. But I think if I put some of that language right next to this metric, then it will focus people's attention on the need to get to 25 million over 5 years, and 5 million each year in a linear stepwise manner is just one way to do it. But if you get there, it'd be better, in fact, if you got, the first 20 million done in the first 3 years, and then it took 2 years to get the last
Right.
5. So
One way to write it is to say that the targets are at least 5 million by the end of year 1, 10 million by the end of year 2, 15, 20, 25, without saying it has to be 5 million per year.
yeah, that's right. So
Yeah,
I'll
I
do
like
that.
it, Dennis, because what we have to do is, as long as we're ahead, that's fine. We can't say, oh, well, we'll make up for this
Right.
in the future. No, it's if you're ahead. And so I think the way you just stated it, Dennis, would prevent
Yeah.
that. So as long as we're overachieving, it's fine. If we're underachieving, that's not acceptable.
You don't want to get penalized for being ahead.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I'm less concerned about the select committee report on this and more concerned about the final budget language, so that's just an area I think we need to talk to when we're in front of the Senate, maybe talk to them about including that kind of concept, that it's, right, X amount by end of each year. And again, if you're ahead, that's great. And then if you're, have a little less the next year, that's okay, as long as you still are hitting that 5, 10, 15, 20. So.
And Sophie, this may give you some leverage. If we include it in our report, you could say, could the legislature endorse the way the select committee thought about it? So it doesn't come from you, it's coming from the select committee. Great. Brian, those are great questions. Any other questions? Sophie, anything else for our group in terms of updates?
I don't think so. I mean, we're moving along. We're in the process. We have a posting out for a director of transformation projects for the transformation. At the same time, we also have a request for proposals out. So we're kind of exploring both avenues, whether we do an internal hire or hire a firm or an external consultant, but to help us again, provide that professionalized project management that's been recommended in the select committee report. So we're doing that right now. Otherwise, the board approved, moving forward with the recommendation that's in here. Again, I think I may have mentioned last time, but you had a recommendation about the board working with a consultant, at least for this year. And Jim Page, the former chancellor of the University of Maine, is working with the board, and we just started doing some of those board development activities on Saturday, and we'll be continuing to do that. So we really have taken the select committee report as a blueprint, and we're trying. The board just voted to approve one of our union contracts, to ratify them, that we just had negotiated. So again, that was a new thing that we've not done recently in the past, but again, based on the select committee report, we made that change. The board adopted that as a policy moving forward, is that the board will ratify bargaining unit agreement. So, we've really moved a long way, and this has really been I think the report has been valuable in moving us along the path, and it's been comprehensive in coming up with a variety of things, not just, one-dimensional, but multi-dimensional. So, I think the board has really stepped up and is recognizing there's all this work to do, and we're kind of rolling up our sleeves and getting to it. So I think it's all been good so far.
Sophie,
Thank you,
what's the-
Sophie.
what's the
Brian.
salary range for that project manager of transformation?
I don't remember the exact amount. I think it's around like 150,000 range. Again, our salaries aren't terribly high in the Vermont State Colleges. That would be a high salary for us. But I think we recognize that it's really important that we get the right person in the position. So we are expecting that we will, we're going to need to pay to get the quality of the help that we need. So I believe that it may be a bit less than that, but it's for us, that's a big salary in our system.
I'm glad to hear that number. I think that's where you need to be for this position.
And we've done, we did have some training. We have folks within the system that are, project managers and teach that. And they came and gave we had a presentation, a training for all senior leadership teams from the colleges on project management. We're trying to really think through and get us all familiar with how to do this. So, and again, we've had different groups from around the college system-wide groups getting together, admissions, marketing, registrar, financial aid. We've had other groups, IT in particular, that are all starting to work together, again, particularly across those three institutions, but to think through, what the change needs to be and starting to work together. So it is an enormous amount of work, but it's, just got to start at the beginning and put your, foot out and just keep moving forward. So that's what we're trying to do at the moment.
Sounds good.
Great. Oh, I didn't realize I'm mindful of time. So we have a final select committee meeting on Monday. And Brian, do you want to tell us what we can expect to receive between now and Friday or whenever, so that we can get a final draft into the hands of the select committee? Because I expect on Monday to really walk through the changes that have happened and make sure that I'm hoping that everyone is feeling comfortable about signing off on this. I did ask at the last committee meeting. I did not hear from anyone. So I'm hoping that people took me at my word that if they had issues, that let us know soon after that last meeting so that we can address them. So that it would be great if we could have unanimous support for this going forward. But I'm hopeful, but we don't know until we get through Monday. But Brian, do you just want to talk a little bit about what you see as the next steps?
Yeah, I'm obviously going to make some additional changes to the document, and there are not extensive. So I wouldn't expect to take until Friday to get this back out to the select committee. It will be redlined and in final draft with draft labeled on it, but in a clean version also for the select committee to review. I'll send you a brief outline of a memo you can stick on letterhead or whatever you want, Joyce. And it'll be up to you to decide whether or not you want the select committee to review that as well. If you did, that it would at least convey to them that yes, a month hence, they're being asked to sort of give their thumbs up to this document altogether. I have no reason to expect that any of them would oppose their would withhold their support for the document based on having heard nothing from any of the other select committee members since the last meeting, like you. So it would be a surprise if they did. I don't know if there's any sense that it would be worthwhile to query them one last time. But anyway, I think absent that, then I would expect that I can ship this thing off possibly tomorrow, certainly by Thursday.
Ryan, to one of your last statements or comments, would it be helpful if I included a little bit of a survey instrument when I send out the agenda and final draft and just ask simply, are you comfortable endorsing this version? Yes, no, and then an area for comments if they have them?
Well, I guess I would probably prefer if the email just included a reminder that this is their last shot.
Okay.
That we're open to hearing any feedback on Monday, but that it's got to be actually I have a little more time than usual to make any further changes. But the problem is that there won't be another meeting of the select committee to really
Hash
take
it out.
issue with any of those additional changes. So
Okay.
So maybe Candace, what you could say is, you know, based on something about that, you know, at the last meeting, Joyce asked if people had concerns that they let Brian and so forth know. We feel that we've addressed all those concerns. And we're hoping that on Monday we can fully endorse this program, this report. However, if you have a concern, please let Brian know immediately or something like that, so that it puts that, you know, our intention is to move forward, but also if someone has a concern, please let us know before Monday, so there's no surprises on Monday that, oh, we have this major concern.
Right.
And put it on, I think for select committees members, they have a responsibility to let us know so that we can address it. It's not, I don't want people endorsing something they don't support.
Mhm.
But I also want people to not wait till Monday to let us know that they have a concern so that we can address
Okay.
it. So however you want to do that, I'll leave that up to you, but that's the general message. Okay.
Got it. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Great. Anything else, Brian, around next steps?
none that I am currently planning for. If anything comes up, I'm sure one of the Joyces will let me know. any of
And I
you.
guess, yeah, and Joyce Manchester just let me know that there's no public comment today. And I would just ask anyone here, any other comments or concerns you want to share with the group before we sign off? Well, I just, you know, this is our last our steering committee meeting, and I just want to thank everybody for your participation. It's been amazing, the attendance that we've had. I really appreciate the variety of opinions and the attention that you've paid to each of the reports and the work that we've done. Thanks to NCHEMS, I feel like we have an amazingly thorough and comprehensive report. And I think that the recommendations that have been made, particularly, I will speak now from with my VSC hat on. I think that the recommendations that have come forward, and I think Sophie alluded to this earlier, that the system has really taken those very seriously and is working already on implementing them. And so I think it's given us some direction and given us some guidance. And I think it's been very helpful. I think also this process has been amazingly informative for the legislature, because I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure that we would not be in the same situation with the legislature right now in terms of their proposal had we not had the direction from the report and from this committee. So I'm grateful to that. And I think, you know, as I look back on it, Joyce Manchester, I'm grateful that we were able to adjust the timeline. I think our timeline was pretty good. Looking back, I think having a December report got it into the hands of the governor before he finalized his budget. I think that the February report really helped move the House along in terms of that. But I think the December report laid the groundwork for legislative conversation. And I think the February report sort of furthered that along. And so, and now we are ready for our final one. So I think that the Joint Fiscal Office, in your wisdom of changing this and moving this all up, it's been a faster pace, it's been a rapid pace, but I think the results have been very favorable. So again, I just want to thank you. And Candace, we couldn't have done this work without you and Nebby. And so thank you for all the focus groups you convened and for doing all the minutes and the agendas and just sort of communicating with people. That's been a huge lift, and I'm grateful for that.
Happy
So-
to do it. And I think you all have charted out a pretty good model that might be employed in New Hampshire pretty soon. So we've learned a lot.
Yeah, New Hampshire's, they're in an interesting spot right now. So we'll see where they all go. And I know NCHEMS has been involved in the New Hampshire piece. And so didn't the legislature just vote to not support the governor's proposal?
Yeah, they're going to go the commission route, it looks like.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you all. Brian will stand by to get our report or from Candace your report via Candace. And I'll see you all on Monday.